Welcome to the Register's Report. My name is John Buckley. I'm the Register of Deeds of Plymouth County. And in this show, we talk about Plymouth County real estate. This show is being taped in September. It's a report on August activity at the Registry of Deeds. Our headline for the month was Sales Volume and Refinance Activity Remains Solid. And I'm going to show you some of the numbers in bar charts as we go across the screen. The first one is a bar chart of deeds, which is the number of sales in August. During the month of August, there were 915 sales of property, lower than the 956 sales in July, 4% lower than last August. However, we're up 1% over the past year, which still shows a healthy marketplace. Second bar chart you're going to see is about mortgages. Over the past year, we've had a drop in mortgages. When the rates went up, a lot of people stopped refinancing. There still are mortgages being recorded on purchases of property. However, we recorded 1,627 mortgages in August, lower than the 1,749 in July. We're down 20% from that same time a year ago, and we're down 39% over the course of the year. Rates are still very low, mortgages are still very low, but many people have already refinanced. The next image you're going to see is a bar chart of foreclosure deeds. Foreclosures have been a difficult problem in Plymouth County, particularly in Brockton and Plymouth. We recorded 36 foreclosure deeds in August, more than the 25 in July, down 5% from last July, and it is trending in the right direction. However, we also note in the next bar chart foreclosure notices, and those have gone up. We are definitely seeing better trends, that the real estate has gone forward in a positive way in sales, and foreclosures have dropped, a positive sign for the marketplace.
The next 30 seconds can save you a lot of money. Just do your laundry in cold and stick to full loads. Auto-sleep your computers. Plug your gadgets in a power strip and switch it off when you're done. Headed out? Turn back your thermostat by 10 degrees. And drive sensibly. The more energy you save, the more money you save. Find other great tips at energysaver.gov.
Welcome back to the Register's Report. In this segment of the show, we always try to do something educational in nature. And I have a great guest on the show, attorney Richard Serkey of the law firm Winokur, Serkey and Rosenberg in Plymouth. He's a member of some of the Real Estate Bar Association's committees. And I just want to thank Richard for joining me on this segment of the show.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so I think it would be helpful to our audience if you could just tell a little bit about your background, how you got into the practice of law, how you ended up in Plymouth.
Sure. I graduated from Boston College Law School in 1974. And the previous year, I had worked for a Plymouth firm as an intern during the summer. And it's the firm that I'm still at. And at that time, an intern was needed to cope with a lot of the zoning and land use issues that were coming up in the wake of the construction of the nuclear power plant in Plymouth, because land was being developed at a very fast pace. So when I graduated from law school, I asked the firm if they would hire me as a full-time lawyer, and they did, and I've never left.
Good. That's a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah. In your practice, you focus on what?
On real estate.
Right.
My practice is on real estate, although we have other attorneys who do other work. But my practice involves reading title abstracts, curing title problems, representing people who go before local boards and committees for special permits or variances and the like, that kind of thing.
And there's a statewide bar association focusing on real estate in Massachusetts. And I know you've been a very active member in that. Can you explain the organization and your role in it?
Sure. It's the Real Estate Bar Association for Massachusetts, known as REBA for short. And it's an organization that focuses on interests involving real estate and legislation and case law involving real estate. I'm a co-chair of the Title Standards Committee, and a member of the board of directors.
Right. I know we talked about a couple issues that had happened over the course of the year in the state legislature. One of them didn't make it through, but I think it's an issue that is well worth explaining to people. The issue relative to foreclosures and people that have bought homes that were foreclosed properties and might have some title issues.
Yes. Let me give you a general example.
Sure.
If Mr. A mortgages his property to Bank 1, and Bank 1 sells the note and mortgage to Bank 2, but doesn't actually sign an assignment of the mortgage until later, and then Bank 2 proceeds to foreclose against Mr. A and sells the property to Mr. B. And then, as a mop-up matter, Bank number 1 assigns the mortgage to Bank number 2. The land court ruled in 2009 that that kind of a foreclosure was flawed because the assignment from Bank 1 to Bank 2 occurred after rather than before the foreclosure. Now, that decision was upheld in 2011 by the state Supreme Court, but the problem is that it had retroactive effect. And so many people whose titles come out of flawed foreclosures that occurred before 2009 have been unable to refinance or sell their homes because of this. And there are steps that can be taken to cure the problem, but they cost money, take time, and in the meanwhile, a refinance or a sale may wither on the vine. And there was legislation that was proposed and passed by the legislature that would have essentially had the effect of giving the people who lost their homes by foreclosure one more year in order to get their title back, given the fact that in all of these cases they've had at least 5 years from 2009 to 2014 to do that. But the governor did not sign it as presented. He instead proposed an amendment that instead of giving them 1 more year, would have given them 5 more years. And hopefully the bill will be resubmitted in 2015, because there are an awful lot of people throughout the Commonwealth who thought they were buying good title when they purchased their properties, but they can't refinance them, can't sell them because of this situation. If they have an owner's title insurance policy, and not all of them do,
Right.
then at least the cost of doing the repair work will be paid for by the title insurance company. But if not, they have to foot the bill themselves.
So 2 points I want to pick up on. One is they were innocent home buyers.
Absolutely. If they bought their properties before 2009, they couldn't have predicted what the 2009 decision would say.
Right.
And the foreclosure may have been a few years prior, it may have been 10 years prior. But the title was good when they bought it. At least they thought so. That was the customary practice. So it's not an attorney who was negligent. It's not a buyer who was risky. It was merely a situation in which a subsequent decision rendered their title flawed.
And the other point I wanted to pick up with from that early discussion is owner titles insurance and how important that is. And I practiced law for many years, and you always advise people that it's worth the cost and can solve problems. You want to comment on that?
Yeah. At a loan closing, you're obligated to purchase a loan policy for the protection of the lender. Mm-hmm. You have an option, but not the obligation to purchase an owner's policy. The owner's policy protects you in a case of the type I just described, because it pays the cost of trying to cure the problem. The loan policy only protects the bank in the event that it forecloses on you, and then there's a problem with respect to the bank selling the property. It's a one-time premium, and I bet you all the people who don't have owner's policies, who have the problem I just described, wished they had purchased it.
And at the time of the closing, there were documents that they are presented with.
Yeah.
as to what their option is and whether they choose to do it, and they sign off on that.
That's right. And a closing attorney, if you decline the owner's policy, will want you to sign a document saying you've been informed and yet you decline.
Right. So I know that got caught up in the end of the legislative session.
Yeah.
Massachusetts has a system now whereby in election years the session is shortened and becomes an informal session, so you didn't see an opportunity to deal with it.
No, the bill was passed on the last day of the legislative session,
Right.
July 31, and as you pointed out, John, there's no legislature in session now. If the bill were to be reintroduced now, any member of the legislature could prevent it from being passed, and I'm sure that would occur.
So that is something that REBA will be reconsidering as you get into the next legislative
Yes,
session.
and other organizations too. The important point is that REBA doesn't have any financial stake in this itself. It's the spokesperson for the innocent, good faith purchasers whom I just described.
Well, again, I know
Yeah.
it happened at the end of the session, and the timing was part of what didn't get a further consideration.
The motivation, I believe, on the part of the governor, I think was praiseworthy. I think he had a concern, as we all do, for people who lose their homes due to foreclosure. But these people have had 5 years already to seek to reacquire their homes, and in the meantime, we have a whole new category of victims, also innocent, who are like collateral damage in this disaster, and they deserve our attention too.
Yeah, and like any property with title issues, you don't have as stabilized a land record system if there are still some title issues in properties that are owned by homeowners.
Right, right.
I know there was a piece of legislation that REBA was successful
Yep.
in getting the Commonwealth to adopt. Legislature approved it and the governor signed it, and that is relative to the removal of land from the registered side of our registry, land court side, and transfer it over to the recorded side.
Your viewers need to understand that there are two types of recordings in Massachusetts. One is registration, which is conducted through the land court, and the other is recording, which is not conducted through the land court. The minority of real estate in the Commonwealth is registered. The majority is recorded. Now, land is originally registered in order generally to cure long-standing title problems that exist well back in history, or title problems that are common to a large parcel of property that's going to be subdivided, and so therefore the problem is going to resurface with every sale. And registration has the effect of giving the owner a certificate of title, much like you get when you buy a car. And on it is written all of the matters that pertain and all the liens that exist.
Right.
So it's a great convenience and a great comfort. The problem is that when you have any instrument to record out of the simple deed and mortgage, for example, if you subdivide the property, or if it goes through a probate because an owner dies, the documents have to be reviewed and approved by the land court in Boston. Mm-hmm. And that can take time.
Right.
And time is the enemy of a lot of transactions. So the motivation behind allowing owners to voluntarily remove their land from the registration system was simply in order to deal with it more conveniently. What happens is if you remove it from the registration system, it still carries the benefit of having been examined and reviewed by the land court, because it has the status of what we call confirmed land, which is registered in all but in name only. So by allowing people at their own choice to remove their land from the registration system, there's a great advantage to commercial transactions in particular. I think with respect to individual homeowners who own their homes as registered land, they're not going to want to do this.
Right.
But if you own a large tract of land, and if that tract of land, for example, includes some registered land and some recorded land, there's a real advantage to removing all of the portions of it that are registered, so you have it all in one system and you can deal with it more efficiently. But having said that, people should always remember also that the great advantage to registered land is the fact that it has a certain presumption of quality when it comes to the title. It's the gold standard.
Right. When I get sworn in as a register of deeds,
Yeah.
I get sworn in separately by the Chief Justice of the Land Court
Yeah.
as an assistant land court recorder, and I certainly have tremendous respect for what they do.
Yeah.
But I know that they're overwhelmed
Yes.
with cases.
They're overwhelmed. And it used to be that a lot of land was submitted for registration for the reasons I just described, but very, very few registration petitions are filed now. Usually, if people are developing land, they will regard title insurance as the private sector's equivalent to what is in the public sector the registration certificate.
Well, I know that that's been in effect since July 1st. Did that law go into effect July 1st?
I believe it was subsequent to that because it was.
Was it delayed from the
Yes, I think it was.
Okay.
I'm not certain,
Sure.
but it was just this summer.
And have you seen any commercial properties or any other individuals?
I haven't. Before the bill passed, there were already plenty of reasons why the court would allow you to remove yourself from the registration system. The effect of this bill is that you can do it for any reason.
Well, I know I would expect in the next REBA conference
Yeah,
that would be a subject of discussion, and we'll get a sense of
that's right.
how it's working across the state. Not every county has the high number of registered land as Plymouth County and Barnstable
Does Plymouth and Barnstable have more?
Barnstable is by far the highest. They've had a lot of complicated titles down there.
Yes.
And still do.
I see. Okay, I didn't know the relative statistics.
Yeah.
Barnstable is even more than Suffolk County and Boston?
I believe they have the highest in the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
So a couple other issues. I didn't throw this one at you in advance.
Yeah.
But I know the closing arguments were recently completed in the Wrexham beach case. Have you ever had any beach rights cases?
I've worked on a case involving beach rights in Plymouth, but I know the Wrexham case is one that Robert W. Galvin Jr. from Marshfield is involved in, and it, to my knowledge, and I haven't read the pleadings, but it involves the typical situation where the people who own closest to the water are concerned about being overrun by people who own far away from the water as they seek to enjoy the beach.
So I know they did receive a lot of our records as part of that, because that Wrexham is in Plymouth County and
Right.
part of Marshfield. And I also know that some of the discussions were based on colonial records.
Ordinances?
Yes.
Yeah.
Any prediction?
I don't. I'm not knowledgeable enough
Yeah.
to. I know that those cases are very complicated, and I know there was a case from Martha's Vineyard that came down in the last year or two involving beach rights, where a beach, as so many of them do, have eroded, and the questions of what happened to ownership lines that are now underwater was decided.
And I know that you've been working very closely on some forms through REBA for mortgage discharges.
Yes. Many people throughout the Commonwealth are in a situation in which a prior mortgage, maybe of a predecessor in title, was paid off, but the discharge wasn't recorded. Or an improper discharge was recorded because, as I said at the beginning of the show, mortgages get bought and sold. And if it's sold by X to Y, you need to get a discharge from Y and not from X. Well, the legislature has passed some statutes that allow situations like those to be cured, either because there's no discharge on record or because there's an improper discharge of record. And REBA, as a service to its constituent attorneys, has been working on a series of forms, and I've been working on them along with a number of other people to make it more user-friendly for REBA members to take advantage of these forms and fill in the missing gap or record the documentation that discharges a paid mortgage. Because otherwise, trying to track down the right parties to do it can become a nightmare.
Well, I know we could talk about that at greater length.
Yeah.
I always advise people to go to one of our satellites in Plymouth, our main office in Plymouth, our satellites in Brockton and Rockland,
Yeah.
and check through our records, or go online and check whether a discharge has been recorded. And
Right.
it's an important thing to solve in the event that there are problems like you described.
Yeah, after a closing and the attorney has sent the money
Right.
to the bank, getting the proper discharge is often an afterthought.
Right.
And you'd be surprised how many cases there are in which notes have been paid, but you look at the record at the registry and it looks like a person has 5 mortgages on his property.
Right.
And 4 of them are probably paid off
Well,
because they come from 5 previous owners.
Well, I will get you on the show in the future when we can talk about all the various alternatives, how people can handle it in some cases on their own. And but getting a signal here that we need to move on.
Our time is up.
And our time is up. But I appreciate, once again, it's always great to talk to you.
It's a pleasure to be here.
I
and
always learn something in my
thank you.
conversations.
And what you're doing with these programs and what you're doing with your town hall meetings is very important for the citizenry of Plymouth County.
Great. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
A boy born in Joplin, Missouri was fascinated by anything with wheels and a motor. The odds of him winning both the Daytona 500 and the Brickyard 400 in the same year? 1 in 195 million. The odds of a child being diagnosed with autism? 1 in 68. I'm Jamie McMurray, and my niece has autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs.
I want to thank Attorney Richard Serkey for the great job he did in describing multiple real estate issues that are current. I do want to note that we have included in this show a listing of foreclosure deeds and notices by community, and it does show the difficulties facing mostly Brockton and Plymouth that you'll see in that list. But I also want to mention that we continue to operate our training room at the registry the first Thursday of every month. It's really been well received. And again, the information provided by Attorney Serkey is great. I want to bring up, as I do always at the close of the show, a couple things a little lighter in nature. We've modified one of our displays at the registry, our Settlements of Plymouth County display. While over the years we've had Wareham, Plimpton, Duxbury, and Carver, we have moved out Carver and is now hosting the town of Kingston. And it's a very great community with a lot of history. And I've brought a couple of our new notable land records, and you'll see images of those. The first one you'll see across our screen is the pumping station in Kingston. The pumping station represents how Plymouth got its water supply, how Kingston got its water supply. Originally, it was from a private company, the Aqueduct Company, Kingston Aqueduct Company, and then that site has changed over to supply the whole town of Kingston. It is a tremendous story that you'll see in this display about how they have done that. The next notable record that I will talk about is the next one that'll pop up is Grays Beach Park. It's one of Kingston's best loved public spaces and really a hidden jewel in the town of Kingston. It is an area that is open space, tennis courts, basketball hoops, and access to the beach. And it was from a 17th century individual that deeded that land over, Edward Gray, and it certainly is a tremendous remaining part of historical Kingston. And the last one I'm going to talk a little bit about is the Willett House. Many people would not know that the history of the Willett House. In 1639, Captain Thomas Willett received a grant of land in the Plymouth colony. It was then the town of Plymouth, but is now taken over and is the town of Kingston. And he arrived in the New World as an indentured servant. He became the colony's trade representative, particularly in Maine and other areas. He also did a lot of trade down in what is currently New York City. It was a Dutch colony at the time, became very friendly with the individuals down there, so that when that Dutch colony became an English colony, he was named as the first English mayor of New York City. I want to thank PAC TV for allowing me to do this show, and it's a great opportunity for me to share information throughout the communities of Plymouth County. I want to thank Dave Antoine, who's done this show with me today, and some of the help I've had on the set, because it really allows us to talk about very important issues in Plymouth County. And it's an opportunity that I get once a month to tell you what the trends are in real estate, a little bit about real estate issues, and a little bit of a great history here in Plymouth County. So thank you for watching this show, and I'll see you next month.